What's up? What's up? What's up? And welcome to the Single Player Experience Podcast, the podcast that's all about celebrating the best kind of gaming out there. That's right, the kind you play by yourself, the single player games. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian Malden, and each and every week I like to dive into the games, the stories, the news, the grooves, everything that matters most in single players games. Today, we're talking spies, martinis, we're talking Astra Martins, we're talking about the long awaited return, baby, because James Bond is back. That's right. IO Interactive just gave us a big, bold showcase of 007 First Light. And all this happened during the PlayStation State of Play. And I've got a lot of thoughts for you. Some good, some skeptical, but most of all, I'm excited because it feels like we're finally getting a true espionage action blockbuster in video games again. So grab your tux, order your martini, shaken and not stirred, and let's dive into what we saw about 007 First Light. And we're going to do that right after the intro. Cue the intro, DJ.
Round one, fight.
And that's the bottom line.
His kick is good.
I need a weapon.
You cannot escape.
You forget 1,000 things every day. How about you make sure this is one of them? Here we go.
It's time for the main event.
All right, so I just want to start with this. Did y'all know this little fact? It's been 14 years. 14 years since we had a proper James Bond game. That's a lot. That's a long ass time. The last time we stepped in Bond's shoes, the PS3 and the Xbox 360 were still in the infancy stage. You know, they were kind of like just popping off. And back then, the Bond games were, let's be honest, kind of hit or miss. You know, we got some good ones and we got mostly some bad ones. But here's the thing. I was one of those gamers who loved the PS2 era of Bond games. They felt like they were Hollywood blockbusters turned into video games. So you had everything that I liked about them included the car chases, the explosions, stealth, the stealth stat sections. You had gadgets and everything in between that made you feel like you were a badass secret agent. It was pure action movie escapism at its finest, and honestly, gaming hasn't given us much of that over in the last couple of years. You know, so I'm happy that James Bond is just back in video games, if I'm being honest. So when IO Interactive, the studio that mastered stealth with the amazing Hitman trilogy, announced that they were making a James Bond game, my hype levels were through the roof. I thought this was a match made in heaven, the perfect setup for us to get like a good James Bond game, but a great stealth sandbox play box that we can kind of manipulate and like execute missions in various fun, goofy setups, you know, like any kind of fashion we could think of. I thought like IO Interactive let us do all sorts of wacky assassinations in Hitman. I think like them being paired with the 007 franchise is just going to be entertainment at its finest, because like we are going to be able to see how all that kind of like imaginative brains that they have over there at that studio are going to be able to, you know, absolutely cook with the IP of James Bond and give us some really cool set piece moments, give us some really cool moments that are kind of like deviations that we can do in different missions. So I have a feeling this is a game that's going to have a lot of replayability to it, and I'm excited about that. So hype levels are through the roof. But let's talk about that James Bond State of Play, which was all about 007 First Light. So Sony teased this like it was this special State of Play. Basically, they hyped it up like they were going to showcase footage from 2 missions that highlighted the game's immersive design and cinematic flair. One excerpt from like their blog post hyping up the event said, from covert operations at a high stakes chess tournament in Slovakia, shout out Luca, and closing with a high altitude showdown to a infiltration of a lavish gala in Kingston, London. And basically, they said like we're going to get everything this game has to offer in this State of Play, and I was excited about that going in. And honestly, I think this showcase was a tale of two halves. If you're watching the B-roll footage, the first couple minutes were absolutely rough. In the State of Play, we saw the long ass opening scene where James Bond drives up to an event and it sort of like kicked everything off in the slowest manner possible. I thought like it looked cool. The game looks good. I think like the visual quality looks like it's there. Evidently, the driving mechanics are going to be there because we're seeing a lot of that in that first couple of minutes. But unfortunately, I felt like that was a slow way to start the 007 state of play. Whereas, like, I wish they would have kind of started us off inside the manor instead of us having to pull up and giving us a lot of background information about what was going on. And I get it, like you want to have the nuance and you want to give a little bit of like pieces of the story in there, but I think like that could have been executed a little better in the state of play because like just driving up to the event, it felt stagnant. Another complaint I had about Another complaint that I had about the way that 007 First Light was showcased in this instance was like the AI. The AI kind of looked dumb as bricks, and we're talking about like AI that can like spot us like actually hanging above their heads when it's so clearly it's clear as day that like we climbed up on this ledge and we were just hanging there. We're talking about AI that also like took I don't know what in ordinary amount of time staring at a garden hose because it activated and basically like he was so confused by why a hose activated and he just turned the hose off and just kept staring at it for minutes on end. It felt like the AI was just dumb as bricks, at least in this sequence where you're walking up into the venue and you find out you don't have clearance to actually get in, so you're trying to find alternate ways of sneaking by. So in the state of play, it showed James Bond basically utilizing some of the environment around him. So you see him basically set bushes on fire, or set bushes or a bag of leaves or a bundle of leaves on fire in a wheelbarrow. And that basically distracts the guard enough for you to kind of get by him and then get on the ledge. Or and then you also have another guard who is standing next to the garden hose that like that's just wrapped around so neatly. You turn on the hose, at least they did in the trailer. You turn on the hose turns on, and this guard is just enamored with finding out how did this hose get turned on, and then he goes to the source, turns off the tap, and just stands there and stares at it like he's seen the light of God. And he just does that for an extremely long period of time that felt extraordinary. It was like, to me, the AI didn't really stand out in that method. I'm excited to play this game. I think this game has absolute juice. That part didn't impress me at all, though. So what did impress me though, and what really surprised me about all of this was like I thought the second half of the second half of the state of play just flipped exponentially to where like I got to see they showed car chases, shootouts, slick melee action and animation. We got to see Bond catching guns in midair like an absolute boss. The lighting and the motion blur made it kind of feel like an action movie. That's when it clicked for me. This is kind of like Uncharted meets Hitman, and that's what I want from this 007 game. Like I've been fiending for that over the shoulder action adventure game that sort of gives me those Uncharted vibes. And when they started showcasing that off, as opposed to like some of the Hitman stealth DNA, I was really excited about this game. Don't get me wrong. I think the stealth is going to be pivotal of this game. And I do like stealth in a lot of action adventure games. I just didn't think the stealth was like shown well in this first like extended look at 007 First Light. I'm hoping that and I trust that, with IO Interactive, them having the pedigree and the lineage of and the history of creating those Hitman games, I think the stealth is absolutely going to be there. I think it's going to be a key premier experience. But, what I saw here, I just don't think it showed well. But the parts that I thought did show well were the car chases, the shootouts, this slick melee combat. James Bond catching that gun like a boss and then utilizing it to his advantage. I'm like, that's what I want to see. So that's good. That's really what I liked about this state of play. And I also want to break down some of the other things that I did like because I feel like the set pieces that they came up with. You see like some bombastic set pieces here, whether it be that mansion that we saw earlier, whether it be like this car chase that we're seeing. I thought the car chase was absolutely fantastic. And then there was the other part that I really liked was the airport scene where you're chasing down all the or you're mowing down several different bad guys chasing after a plane. That looked bombastic. That looked exciting. The plane itself, the action parts within the plane, that looked absolutely sick. I am excited for it. So I like third person over the shoulder action adventure games, and I really like them when they're like more linear focused in the sense because like it feels like we get these big set piece moments. I also liked Uncharted for being able to have some open areas that we were able to explore as well. So I'm hoping we can get a little bit of that open area feel from Uncharted 4, especially when we're in like areas like Madagascar, but then you kind of mix it in with like some linear bombastic over the top blockbuster set pieces that really rounds out the story and makes the game feel like that action movie that action movie that you have your hands on. So really like the set pieces. They looked bold, they looked big, they looked like blockbuster moments. I like the melee combat in general as well because like the melee combat looked heavy and impactful. It looked like all the action was purposeful as opposed to it just being a additive function of the game, and I love that. Like the melee combat felt like it is you are always in control of what's going on. It's this mixture of like kung fu meets gun fu all at the same time, and I like that. And like until we actually get a James Bond game, this feels like the closest thing to that. This feels like Mission Impossible meets James Bond in the best ways possible with the combat. You know, I also like I also want to highlight the dialogue system because I thought the dialogue system that they showcased in the state of play looked absolutely amazing. IO looks like they're bringing it with the Hitman DNA at that part to where they're giving you the options to absolutely bluff, sneak, or brute force your way through any situation. Especially the bluff mechanic was the one that really stood out to me. The fact that you can get caught in an area where you're not supposed to be at, and then your ability to bluff and try to use that to your advantage and still be able to stay in stealth mode, or even if you feel like your stealth is going to be broken, put yourself in an advantageous position to where like maybe you hide at a certain point, maybe at least you have a split second to get your gun out and do some damage before like all hell breaks loose and you're on the back foot and you're on the defense. Like I love that. I can't wait to see how well utilized the bluffing and the bluff mechanic is going to be because like if it's everything like they showcased in the state of play, that's probably going to be one of my favorite aspects about the game. So yeah, I like the dialogue system. I like the fact that you're going to have a little more options than you can expect in this type of game, and that helps add another layer to the stealth component. So I'm really excited about the stealth. I don't think it's showcased well in the state of play, but all that said, like everything that we saw with like the sneaking, brute force, or bluff options within the stealth gameplay gave me hope that this is going to be a really cool and fun adventure in that regard. I also want to talk about the replayability aspect. I broached on this a little bit ago, but the fact that this game feels like it's going to have like these set levels that can pick, and then you can do those levels a certain way, and then replay that level and do it probably in a completely different manner, or just change things up like 10 to 20% of like instead of killing this guy, maybe you knock out a different guy, and that guy was guarding a path, and that path takes you to a whole new point in the level that you are able to kind of explore and maybe maybe that leads you to a objective or maybe a side piece, actually like a side objective in the game, or maybe that leads you to another route to actually get to the main objective. So I think this game is going to be highly replayable, and I'm excited about that. One of the things that I'm most looking forward to about 007 First Light. So yeah, it's appealing to me. It doesn't necessarily look like this game's going to be a 10 out of 10 game, but I don't think it really needs to be, if I'm being honest. There's that. I am excited about that. I'm excited that we're getting a Uncharted meets Hitman game. Like it feels like the dream come true for Bond fans. So, with all that said, we got to talk about some of the last bit of news regarding this game because there was more out there. We've been waiting patiently, a lot of us, since this game was announced to see when it was going to be released, if it was going to make the back half of 2025 or if it was going to get pushed to 2026. And, we got some news on that front. Turns out it's dropping before GTA, thank goodness. That means like it got the hell out of that GTA vortex and it's going to be perfectly positioned, or at least like more competitively positioned to try to make an impact with a lot of people, you know, and not necessarily get lost within the sauce that is GTA. So this game, 007 First Light, is coming out in March 27th of 2026. Pre-orders give you early access to pre-orders give you early access. It also gives you deluxe edition perks, and IO also announced a $299 legacy edition. I ain't paying that. I ain't paying that for a legacy edition of the game. You can holler at me when you're sober, but if you want to know what comes in that legacy edition, it comes with a golden gun figurine, so that's actually pretty cool. It comes with exclusive skins. It comes with a steelbook case and much more. Basically, it's a full collector's treatment. Is it overpriced as hell? I think so, but speak with your wallet. For you 007 fans, this might actually be like a dream come true. So, anyways, that's all the news that I got for you about 007 First Light. What do you think about the game? Are you going to be picking it up? Or is this like a day one buy for you? Or are you going to probably wait for a sale or wait for the reviews on this game? Anyways, let me know your thoughts.
Mission complete.
All right, so I want to move on to the next bit of nerdy news that I think you should know about. Launching globally on October 16th is the Xbox Ally X and the Xbox Ally, offering two unique versions to match your individual playstyles. At least that's what Xbox Wire is posting. Prices are astronomical, to say the least. So for the Xbox ROG Ally X, the actual big boy, this is the creme de la creme, the high end. This is the one you're probably going to look at and you're going to say, like, if I was to get one of these, I would probably want that Ally X. Like that's the one. That would be the one. That one's going to be available for $999.99 USD. So over here in the United States, you're paying a whopping one stack, 1 grand, 1K for the Xbox ROG Ally X. I'm gonna be honest, it's high as hell. That is high as hell in this economy. I get it. Like they say, if you got the money, spend with your wallet and vote with your wallet. But I think that might be a little too high. I understand why it's the price that it is. Tariffs and all that is what they're going to market it as. But even with all that going on, that's a steep price to pay. For those of you who don't know what the ROG Ally X is, let me kind of explain to you what Xbox Wire has in their write-up for what you can look forward to with the Xbox Ally handheld. So this handheld allows you to launch directly into the Xbox full screen experience. So this is a dedicated experience, purpose-built for gaming and powered by Windows 11 and inspired by the console user experience. This is a custom version of Xbox, of Windows 11 with that Xbox UI on top of that. And it basically allows you to it basically allows like the console to focus more so on the games than all of the backdoor Windows programs that kind of would bloat the device if mainline Windows was integrated in there. So with that dedication there, at least I think this will run well. I haven't gotten hands on with it yet, but that's promising. This also has a dedicated Xbox button that opens a enhanced game bar overlay for Windows 11, making it easier for you to return to the home screen, browse your library, launch or quit games, chat with friends, access the ROG's inventory, armory, crate, SE, and absolutely more. You're getting a aggregated gaming library, which gives you quick access to Xbox Game Pass. You know, uh, you're also being able to install games from BattleNet and other PC stores like Epic Game Store and Steam. You know, there's Xbox controller grips or controller inspired grips on the side of it. So you kind of got that ergonomics working for it. From what I hear from people who've gotten hands on experience, they say it feels good in the hands there. So yeah, you're getting all that for a whopping $1,000 though. And I'm gonna be honest, you're gonna have to ask yourself personally, do you think that is worth a hundred I said $100. You already know what I mean. $1,000 investment. I don't necessarily think so. I think like I'm intrigued by the prospect, but I have a Steam Deck, so right now I feel like I'm set on the handheld side of things. But if this thing was a lot cheaper, if this device was more aligned with a $400 price tag, $300 price tag, marked in a similar price vein to the Steam Deck, I think that would be way more enticing for a lot of people. But as it stands, the ROG Ally X in particular, the high end version of this, is a premium device. This is for premium gamers who like their premium devices, who like to have all their bombastic Xbox premium experiences on the go. So if you're one of those gamers, I can perfectly see why you would be, willing to shell out the money. I don't necessarily know about the I don't necessarily know about like pulling out a stack for it, but I get it. Like I could, if you got it, you got it. It ain't tricking if you got it. This is what they say. But anyways, the ROG Ally, the ROG Ally is also available. It's the lower end version of that game. I think it comes with half the storage and a slightly different internals. So it's available for $600 in the US. This It's being advertised as the essential handheld for everyone from a casual game player to an avid enthusiast. So this is kind of like the Series S version of this device. But anyways, the storage, you can also it's expandable evidently. It looks like it's expandable via the micro USB slot. It also has like an SSD attached to it. Looks like there's variations from the 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and 4 terabytes to make it more to expand on that storage a little bit more. So that sounds great. But yeah, I think this is going to be a lot pricier than a lot of people want in the market. With the AMD processors that they have in there, I'm hoping that this still gives solid performance and makes people who wants to shell out the $1,000 happy. So, what do you think? Are you going to be one of those people who are going to buy the ROG Ally X or the ROG Ally Xbox Edition? Let me know in the comments below. All right, so here's one of the coolest news stories of the week. Microsoft has officially announced that Forza Horizon 6 will be in Japan. That's really exciting. Like they announced this during Xbox's Tokyo Game Show broadcast, and it was revealed that the game is going to release first for PC and Xbox consoles before arriving on PS5 post launch. So the team at Playground Games and like this is a quote from Matt Booty, who basically said the team at Playground Games and Turn 10 have poured their hearts into Forza Horizon 6, bringing Japan to life like never before. He also stated that this has been the most requested location since the very first game, and we can't wait to share more in the next year. With all that said, we also got a really cool trailer. the trailer didn't really showcase anything outside of what looks to be like a regular garage. And it kind of gave off some of the history of the places we've been and the locales of Forza's past. And I think that was really cool to see, paying homage to what we've gotten before. And also, before we get a big location reveal at the end for the for Forza Horizon 6. So that was fun. I think we're going to need to see a little bit more to see what new things they're going to bring to the table. But we already know Playground Games absolutely kills it with the Forza Horizon series. That was IGN's Game of the Year, I believe, the year it came out, which is surprising considering it's a racing game. But, like Forza Horizon 6 coming in 2026 is just adds another game to what looks like it's going to be a stellar year of video games, so we got to see a lot. We got to see just a little sneak peek with that trailer of Forza Horizon 6, just enough to whet our appetite and to let us know what's coming on the horizon. Wait, horizon? See what I did there? Anyways, with all that said, let me know what you think. Are you going to be jumping into Forza Horizon 6 when it launches? Are you going to wait for the game to go on sale? Are you a PS5 gamer who's probably going to like chill off on the game until it hits your platform? Or do you think this game is going to win Game of the Year when it comes out in 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. All right, everybody. So that's going to be a wrap for today's episode of the Single Player Experience Podcast. I'm cautiously hyped for 007 First Light. It may not be a Game of the Year contender, but it looks like it could scratch an itch that we haven't had scratched in a very long time. It looks like a good 7 out of 10 experience. And if it's that, I'm perfectly happy. Like sometimes we need that in our lives, that good, but not necessarily Game of the Year contender experience that feels like more like a fast food experience more than a premium creme de la creme steak. Sometimes we go for that sort of thing. Anyways, I'm hyped for 007 First Light. I'm also looking forward to seeing more details about Forza Horizon 6 when it comes down the pipeline. We'll probably get more of that in the developer direct that Xbox likes to do at the beginning of every year. We'll probably get more of that. And then, I'm cautiously, I want to see what the hype level for the ROG Ally X is going to be. If people are going to jump on that thing, or if people are kind of like how well that thing is going to sell. I think it's going to be very interesting. Anyways, let me know your thoughts. Are you looking forward to playing 007 First Light? What's your thoughts on Horizon? Are you going to be buying the ROG Ally X? You going to be dropping that one stack? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, baby. Leave a review and share it with your fellow gamer. And hey, come hang out with me in the Single Player Experience Discord. We got polls, we got game discussions. You can share like clips and screenshots of the games you're playing. Plenty of room for you to share all your favorite spy gadgets as well if we want to keep it 007 themed. Anyways, real or imagined, we'll always have fun in the Single Player Experience Discord server, so come on, join us. Anyways, I've been Sebastian Malden, and this is a wrap for this episode. And remember, the best experience is always that single player experience. Until next time, bye, everybody.